Hello, and welcome to Games That Don't Suck, a gaming retrospective in the Shea Hates Everything podcast family. My name's Kyle. I'm your host today, and I am, of course, joined by my brother, Shea. Welcome, Shea.
Hey, hello, thank you. I am very excited to talk about good video games.
Yeah,
we spent
unlike
a lot
last
of time. Yeah, I mean, that is equally fun. Sometimes more fun, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I am very excited to talk about good video games for a change.
Absolutely. So, Games That Don't Suck, this is a series where we look back at some of gaming's highest highs. Right? Each episode, we focus on a particular year in gaming, arguing about what the top 5 games of each year should be. Now, we have done this for 1995, and just because of the timing of when we started Games That Suck and Games That Don't Suck, we're doing this as our Game of the Year podcast in January. So, for 2023, we're going to be fighting tooth and nail to find out what the top 5 games are between you and I, right? So we have our own personal list, but this is what the Shea Hates Everything top 5 games of 2023.
Which should tell you that I get to make whatever decisions I want because it's my name in the title.
But I'm the host, though.
That's how we balanced it out. You're the host. It's my brand name. That's how we come to equal footing. But it's it's also not a democracy. It's not like we're voting because we would be here literally forever if we just voted.
There's no tiebreakers here.
Yeah.
We must come to a consensus.
Yes.
So speaking of the format, right? So Shea and I have scrolled through the Wikipedia page for game releases in 2023, picking out any of the games that we have played or have significant knowledge of, that's a key point, that we'd like to nominate for the Don't Suck list. So we're going to start by talking about each game on our larger list, which it looks like we have, I think, 16 games on that list right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll start, after we've talked about all of them and given some information, our thoughts and feelings both ways, then we'll start cutting it down to a short list and eventually, hopefully, agree on an ordered top 5.
Yeah, if you're looking at the episode length and it's like 9 hours, then you know we probably did not end up agreeing on a top 5, and it probably just gave up at some point. But yeah. I doubt that is the case.
I think both of us are going to have to give a little bit of ground.
Yes. This is much harder to do than Games That Suck. And it's much harder to do than Games That Don't Suck from 1995.
Right.
We're like 30 years
where we care a little less.
That.
Well, that's not really true. We care in a different way.
In a different way, sure. But I think we probably care far more passionately about games we recently played than games we played as a kid.
Yeah. Also, I mean, just 2023, as we're going to talk about, as everybody's been talking about,
yes,
it was an incredible year in games.
Absolutely insane.
For the games themselves.
Yes.
As 2023 as a year in gaming, like broadly as an industry, kind of a shit show.
I would put that in a suck list.
Yeah, that
would be the gaming industry in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we kind of launch into our long list, and we'll go through alphabetically. We'll talk about all those 16 games that we have on here. A couple of short disclaimers. Disclaimer number 1 is a really key important one. Shea and I are getting saucy this month.
Is saucy the word? I think it's just sauce. Saucy,
yeah.
I feel is like we're gonna get like flirty, which is not what you and I are gonna do on this podcast.
No, I don't ship that.
Maybe with the audience.
No fan art.
Maybe we'll
saucy
get
with
the audience.
The folks at home.
Yeah.
This is gonna be weird if Dad listens to it. You know what? Let's just stay away from saucy. Sauced. Shea, tell me and the listeners at home what you're drinking during tonight's episode.
Yeah, so I'm going, middle-aged white mom.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be rocking some Espolón Tequila Blanco. Maybe you can hear a little bit of clinking of some ice.
Oh, I hear it.
2 shots, and over the top we are going to pour some black cherry White Claw.
Ooh.
So I'm going White Claw and tequila. That spiked on my mic very high, so please pay attention to that, Kyle, as you're editing, because that might be too loud.
I'm leaving it all in.
You hear the pores?
Ooh, I hear it. Hopefully the listeners can.
I have my pop filter stuff on here, so you might not hear, but maybe you can hear the sizzle. Probably not.
No.
I got some nice bubbles going. So yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. I am rocking some North Coast organic Honeycrisp apple cider.
Ooh.
Mixed with 2 shots of Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
Always a classic.
Yeah. This is my middle-aged white woman going out into a
on vacation
yes, in a cabin in the mountains.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine is I need it on a Tuesday night. I just put my kids down to bed. I got to wake up for another fucking day of this bullshit to drive them to school, go to Pilates after and gossip and stare at the hot Pilates instructor. Man or woman, who knows? You know, I'm in my 30s. I'm pretty open-minded these days. That's the energy I'm bringing to this podcast.
Very good. I love it. Oh, so, I mean, neither particularly masculine drinks, let's say, but dude, this is what I'm here for. I don't care about the masculine drinks. Those aren't fun.
There is literally nothing I could care less about than defining what a masculine drink is like.
What was on the flagship podcast, what was that, that other podcast that you had referenced, the guys that were like, if your woman doesn't knit, is she even a woman?
Oh, sure. They definitely have an episode
on what
liquors are acceptable to drink for an alpha male.
Yes,
it's just like straight whiskey or bourbon, and that's it. Nothing else. Get that gin out of here. Yeah. Fucking pussy drink with your gin.
And then in the same breath, they'd be like, "But have you tried this new like banana craft beer? Let's go axe throwing."
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
it's only $13.99 per can at my local IPA vendor.
Yeah.
You can really taste the notes of bullshit in it. So that was disclaimer 1.
Yeah.
We have more disclaimers?
Yeah, yes. Well, the other one I want to touch on it before we get to the long list, that there are some games that don't appear on the long list for a variety of reasons. One of the games...
Well, not for one reason. It's all the same reason.
Okay. Well, Starfield isn't on this list because I will say, Starfield is on my top 10 personal list, but
You need to play more games.
Oh my God. I got a lot out of it, but I'm kind of done talking about Starfield, and I know it's not going to make the top 5, so I'm
fucking right.
I'm fine leaving that one lie. I also, from my top 10, I didn't put House Flipper 2 on here, because I think it's going to be a hard sell to get you on board with it, and there are so many other games that are incredible on this list of 16 for us to talk about.
Don't pull that. We had this conversation off pod. I 5 minutes before we started recording, I said I was open to House Flipper 2. You said that you didn't have the passion for it. So don't throw it like, I don't think I'd be able to convince Shay to get it on there. That is not at all what's happening.
Well, no, that's what I said before the pod. I said I didn't think I would get you on board with it being as one of our top 5s or whatever.
And I said I'd be open to that. I've got a handful of games on here that I know that you're not hot and bothered about, and I'm still going to fight for them. This is on you, bro. If you're not going to fight for it, then fine, but don't put it on me. That's what this podcast is about. Arguing. Convincing the other person after hours of making them give up and get what you want. That's what this is about.
I don't have enough Fireball in this drink for this conversation.
Hey man, yeah, that's fine.
And lastly, there is a game that I think if I had been able to play,
you didn't even mention the other games, bro. You just said Starfield.
No, Starfield and House Flipper 2 were the 2 from my top 10 that didn't make it on.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a game that I think could have made it onto my top 10, but I just didn't get to play it enough. I started playing with my buddy today the game RoboQuest, which came out in November. Fucking incredible game. It's a roguelite FPS that you can play single player or 2-player co-op. You do runs and you get a currency where you can like build up and get a bunch of upgrades and stuff to carry on to your next run and all that. It's got all that stuff. But it hits really hard. Like the music goes way too hard. The visual aesthetic is very original Borderlands with the heavy cell shading and the cartoony style and like the cobbled together technology feeling of it. and you get into a really good. The game has a tempo and a beat, and you get into that flow really easily. The guns all feel great. There's a ton of gun variety, a bunch of different kinds of skills. They all feel fantastic. I think it's a very underrated game, but I started playing it today, and I only played 3 hours with my friend, so I can't put it on my top 10, but I have a feeling it would have made it had I been able to play more. So those are my disclaimers. Do you have any that you'd like to bring up?
Not that are specific to me, but since you already mentioned Starfield, I guess it's worth just mentioning. There are 2 other well-regarded games from 2023 that you will not hear on this list. Those being Resident Evil 4 and Final Fantasy 16. If you're wondering why those are not on this list, I recommend listening to our Games That Suck podcast from December.
I had feelings about these video games.
Yeah. I mean, the only other, because I guess in fairness, there are like Tears of the Kingdom. You played a couple of hours and bounced off. I did not play, so we're not in a position to really judge that one way or the other. I think that's probably the only other like huge game that we won't talk about on either the games that suck or games that don't suck.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, yeah, man. Let's dive in. Let's do it.
Oh man, we have to start off with the biggest banger of them all because we're going alphabetically.
We go ahead and tell us what it is.
It's Alan Wake 2.
Oh, okay.
Developed.
So
yeah. What? You go ahead.
I was just gonna say we don't need to talk about this game right now. We can just bump it up to the short list.
Okay. Thank Christ.
There's no way this game isn't going to make the short list. We don't need to dive into it now. Let's trim down and then see where we're at and see how hard you need to fight for it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Give us the 60-second version of why it's amazing.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't listened to a previous pod, which come on, you should. If you want to listen to Kyle talk about Alan Wake 2, listen to our
the last 3 podcasts.
Yeah. Well, was it the December podcast where you first played it?
No, it would have been November. I talked about it.
Whatever the first podcast you talked about it on, you literally talked about that game for
like
hour.
45 minutes, yeah.
No, it was an hour, bro. It was like 50-some minutes.
That's incredible. That's almost as incredible as Alan Wake 2. Developed by Remedy, published by Epic Games, and released on October 27th. On PC, it was only on the Epic Games Store on release, which is unfortunate. But, yeah. Mm-hmm. Alan Wake 2, why it's automatically being moved up to the short list. It's my number 1 game of the year. It blew me away in so many different ways, from art direction, voice acting, the way in which it collides different mediums with their, like, they got real artists to make bespoke songs for the game, as if they're like, they got real artists to play fake artists to make songs that are from the game's universe. It's crazy. There's all this FMV stuff, the way they layer it over gameplay, the way they sprinkle that stuff in is masterfully done. It makes it work in a way that any other FMV in any other game ever has been super hokey and feels weird. In this one, it fits right in like a glove. It's incredible the way they do it. I think like the game is littered with incredible moments from start to finish. It builds on the existing mythos of their kind of Remedy-connected universe in really exciting ways. It answers a lot of questions, but also sets up a bunch of new questions, which is exactly what you want from fiction. It hits in all the ways that like a really good book hits for me, and I think that's probably why some people aren't here for it, but that's also why it's very much my shit. So, Alan Wake 2, going up to the short list.
I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Are we ready to move on? Okay.
You need to Alan wake up.
2. No, I love how much you love Alan Wake 2. You were over the moon excited for it, and with a game like this, there is a ton of risk in making a game like this, even if it was just a sequel to Alan Wake. But the way they integrated all of their other series and the sort of like multiversal narrative, and from my understanding in the story, just a bunch of risk taking in how they told the story, the different means in which, you mentioned the FMV, like this is not a game for everyone, and that is a tough game to make these days.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really awesome that it turned out as well as it did. And even knowing that it's not everybody's cup of tea, like I know it's not mine, right? Like I could totally get a lot out of the story of the game, but how it ties into all of the other Remedy stuff, like that wouldn't resonate with me because I'm not a Remedy like fanboy.
Right.
And the horror game part of it, the survival horror part of it, like that is a huge turnoff for me.
Right.
But this is a game not even that I can look at and be like, I respect that game, even though it's not for me. Like I am so psyched that this game exists for people like you, Kyle, that enjoy it and that dive super deep in it. Like the fact that it was able to exceed any potential expectation y'all had for this game is so fucking cool. And I'm so glad that this game exists and that Remedy gets to keep making weird shit. It'll make me a little sad if they keep making shit that's this weird, because it's not really my cup of tea. Like, I'm hoping Control 2 isn't as off the rails as Alan Wake 2, because, man, I loved the first game. But for Alan Wake 2, just this single game, I'm glad that it's the weirdest thing it could possibly be.
Yeah, and I do think it lends itself to that weirdness more than maybe Control did. But because I also, like, Control was also...
Control has some weirdness in it, though.
Yeah,
it's got plenty of weirdness.
Yeah, but it was also it was setting up a new sort of like a new in-universe IP.
Yes,
and so a lot of it was about that, and so the ties to Alan Wake were very tenuous, very small things here and there in the main game, and then in the DLC it was the AWE event, which was very Alan Wake centered. But Alan Wake 2 kind of building off of that. Yeah, that is a fair point. I do wonder if how do they strike the balance for people who really liked Control but maybe weren't on board for hopping into Alan Wake 2 and just want to go to Control 2. That'll be interesting.
We shall see. But for now, Alan Wake 2 definitely on the short list.
Oh, big time. Next one in alphabetical order, Baldur's Gate 3. Developed by Larian, published by Larian, released on August 3rd on PC, September 6th on PS5, and December 7th on Xbox. Those staggered releases. This is a game that had been in early access for a little while. The first act of the game had been playable, and then they did a whole Act 1 overhaul, and then when they released the full game as well. But I think we did a little bit of before the pod talking on this one. I don't think it's going to make the short list because you very recently started playing this, and I think we both have problems with. We both have too many problems with it to like make it an automatic shortlist recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very confident. I don't think it belongs in the shortlist personally, unless you would disagree. I think it's worth talking about in this context because, like, I am new to. I just started playing it this past month. It certainly is not a game that we would have talked about in Games That Suck. Like, I don't want to intimate that like I think this game is bad. It's extremely disappointing for me in playing it because I just am not having fun with the combat scenarios. And like, I'm not a D&D person. I'm not a turn-based CRPG person. So I'm coming at this game from well behind where most people are coming at this game.
Yeah.
Those that love it, I should say. Like, I just don't have a lot of frame of reference for how to engage with a game like this. And that has become just too big of a hill to climb. Like, it's a game I've been playing with my wife. We'll dive more into this on the flagship podcast for February for those that want to listen. But like, for her and I, we wanted more of the story and the interactions with the characters. I intentionally made my character super charismatic and high persuasion because I wanted to be a talky guy. And all of that part of it is fantastic. I love engaging with the characters and the random NPCs in the world. I think that the voice acting is largely fantastic. The writing is largely fantastic. I'm not a huge fan of the supporting cast. At least, I'm 6 hours in, maybe even less. I'm not a huge fan of the characters that I've met so far because, we talked about this a little bit, Kyle, but like, it feels like they wanted to make every character kind of a piece of shit. but
Yeah.
like you're supposed to be attracted to people who are pieces of shit because we're all fucked in the head these days. And I'm instead finding them to be just all off-putting. Like I don't want to be around any of them.
Right.
So that part of it is a huge bummer for someone that came to this for the story and the writing. And then on top of that, the actual combat scenarios, I don't find them fun. And it's not just that it's turn-based, it's the paralyzing feeling of having too many options without any good guidance on what are my best options, right? They wanted to create this sandbox for you to play and do whatever the hell you want. And for people that like are used to that play D&D, that's amazing that they were able to accomplish that in a video game. It's super laudable. And to compare to Alan Wake 2, like this is a game that I respect that they were able to do this and make it all work and have it play out the way they want it to play out. That's just not me. Like I go into a combat scenario like I want to use special attacks and I want to use, height advantage or whatever. Like I'm not thinking, oh, I wonder if I pick up this box and throw it at this guy and it knocks him. Like I'm not thinking like that. That's just not how I want to engage with the game. And so it's just not for me. And that's really all it is. It's nothing negative about Baldur's Gate 3. I just don't find the combat to be fun. And that's hugely disappointing for me because I was so excited to check it out. But it is worth talking about in this context because of how much everybody loves this game. And because we haven't really talked about it, it felt like it would be a miss if we didn't at least mention Baldur's Gate 3 in some capacity on this podcast.
Yeah, and you had sent me a text that I think really resonated with me where I think you said something to the effect of, it's a game that almost requires you to try and exploit it at every turn.
Right.
Because otherwise it like brutally punishes you for just engaging with it like at face value. And I totally get that. Like you said, those creative thinking outside the box problem solving, like that is very Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's very modern Dungeons and Dragons. Certainly not like classic, but that's a thing that the game is really encourages you to do. But I think it also kind of makes it mandatory because of how punishing a lot of those combat scenarios can be and how bad your companion AI is and stuff. Even as someone who really loves D&D, I just came away from every session in Baldur's Gate like, I can't believe they made that. That's incredible. This would be way more fun if it was just a Dungeons and Dragons session because I could actually do the stuff that I want and have like a discussion with the DM about it. And that's not fair, really, I don't think, but it was my experience, and so that's why it's not something that I want to go to bat for necessarily. Because again, I'm not like, I'm not trying to be this super detached games journalist, the very objective games journalist. Like, this was my experience with it, and it kind of is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I think anyone that tries to apply objectivity to how they talk about their experience with the game is fooling themselves. Like, there are elements of a video game that you can look at objectively, whether or not they are like well executed or not. Like, I think graphically, it's very easy to look at a game that looks really good and a game that really doesn't and say objectively one way or the other. But in particular, a game like Baldur's Gate 3, like, there isn't a single person on the planet that can be like, this is the objective take about Baldur's Gate 3.
Right.
I hate that. I hate that crap. People that look for objectivity in reviews, like, that's so stupid, man.
Yeah, I mean,
like, we're not asking a robot to write a review.
That's why the whole industry moved away from that kind of coverage in the first place, is because it's so unreliable. And if you set up that expectation with the audience is only ever going to try to poke holes in it.
We're all just human beings. Like, we're engaging with these games where we come from, and that's why you should always take reviews with a grain of salt.
Yes.
That's why you should always look at multiple reviews. That's why you should find reviewers that you
share your
like
sensibilities.
Their process. And the thing that's so frustrating is seeing people that, oh, I really like this reviewer, but then they reviewed one game poorly that I liked, or one game well that I didn't like, and now I'm going to write them off.
Right.
As if to say, like, you have to agree with this person 100% of the time. It's about who do you enjoy their process and how they look and think about games. And for people that listen to this, like, that's what we would ask and expect of you, right? Like, the fact that neither Kyle or I were super into Baldur's Gate 3, maybe you super fucking were. but hopefully you can at least understand our perspective of why we didn't love the game. And it's not like we're shitting on it arbitrarily. We're not even shitting on it at all, frankly.
No, we're saying it's incredible, but there were just things that we didn't like.
Things that, like, we talked on the last podcast in December on like our superlatives of games we wished we like more the most. And this was before I had started Baldur's Gate 3. That's my number one, man.
Yeah.
This is my number one game I wish I enjoyed the most. Because there are elements of it that I really loved. It was so fun to create my character with my wife. Like, we spent like 2 hours just creating our character and chatting through. And she came up with this crazy backstory for our like elven warlock guy about he's, from money, but he gave it all up for this girl. And like nothing that is in the game at all. She just made it up because it was fun. That's so cool. And that's what makes D&D special.
Yeah.
It's just, it just didn't translate to a video game for me. But that's it.
Right. I think they definitely got the closest anyone ever has.
Totally.
I think that's worth something, but not here.
Yeah, no doubt.
So here, Baldur's Gate 3, comfortably not making the short list. Why don't you take the next one? I think this one's mostly you.
Yeah, so I have Cocoon on this list. This is from Geometric Interactive, published by Annapurna, who rarely misses. This came out in September on the 29th. When it comes to like true indie games, this is my favorite of the year. We've talked in the past as I had finished it, the back half of the game felt a little tedious and a little bit even like more mentally overwhelming than the first half did with the world within world stuff.
Right.
But, in totality, I think the sort of abstract storytelling really worked for me, and the ending of the game really worked for me and gave me a sort of a sense of finality and accomplishment that you're supposed to feel as a player. And especially in the first half of the game, just the inventiveness of the puzzles and how they find such creative ways of making you think outside the box or outside of the globe or whatever, outside of the sphere, as it were, in the game. I just think is like really impressive and shows a lot of creativity and frankly like intelligence to be able to craft something like that.
It's hard to find new puzzles.
Sure, yes.
It's hard to think of new kinds of puzzles, and I feel like I'm always surprised when someone comes up with one. It's like, oh, how the hell did you think of that? That's cool.
Yeah. And frankly, like I remember seeing trailers for this game and knowing it was coming from, some of the folks that had worked with Playdead on games like Inside, and being really psyched by what I had seen in the trailer, but also knowing how like that it was this worlds within worlds puzzle, thinking even in the trailers of like, oh man, this might be like too much. This might be too much for me to get into. I might not want to push my brain this hard that it looks like you need to push your brain really hard. And I was pleasantly surprised in the first half of the game with how intuitive it all felt. It's a hard puzzle game, but it feels really intuitive, and it's sort of like it's like a left brain, right brain. Like it makes you think differently than a normal puzzle game would. Like a game like Portal, which is one of the greatest puzzle games of all time. Like the way that game makes you think is completely different than the way a game like Cocoon makes you think. I think that fails a little bit in the second half just because of how arbitrarily complex some of the puzzles get. But I still like overall was just really, really impressed and like blown away by the inventiveness of the puzzles. And then, I think the game looks really cool. All of the worlds have such a distinct visual identity. I really, really loved this game. And it bums me out that like the boss battles were such a hindrance for you, because it seems like other than the boss battles, you were liking it.
Yeah, like I like the graphical style, the simple cartoony style. I thought the soundtrack was very evocative. Mm-hmm. I liked the style of the puzzle solving and how it was making my brain think through the problems and things to solve. It was those damn boss battles. It really, like, and it didn't take much, right? But it like I died a couple times on the first boss, and I hit the second boss, I think it was, and I died like 4 times, I think, on that boss. I was just like, you know what? This is not, like, the puzzles are cool and they're satisfying. This whole thing is interesting, but I I was not in a place to throw my head against the boss battles when like that was so far from the thing that I was interested in the game for.
Right.
And so that's why I dropped off. But yeah.
So, I mean, because for me personally, I would push to keep this game for now. Like, I don't know that it would make it, but is this something that, you know, that you could look past the boss battle part of it to the rest of the game? That do you like the rest of the game enough that you feel like it has a chance?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to like cut it early because I also know it's something you feel relatively strongly about as well. And it's not something that I'm like vehemently against or anything. So I mean, it's not a game. It's not like in my top 3 or anything this year, but it's definitely in my top 10. It's the highest. Oh, I guess I should requalify that. There is another indie game on here that I think we both really love, but this one, it's definitely on my top 10. One of my favorite indie games of the year for sure. I would love to keep it for now and then have the conversation later. Yeah. All right, next in alphabetical order is the Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty DLC. Obviously developed by CD Projekt Red, published by CD Projekt, and released on September 26th. So Shea, you had started Cyberpunk again. You didn't get to the Phantom Liberty stuff, is that correct?
That is correct, but part of this update was about the 2.0 stuff.
Yeah.
So that element, I mean, I'm like deep into base. I've probably put 20 hours into base Cyberpunk again based on the 2.0 stuff. So yeah, I knew that I wasn't going to finish Phantom Liberty before this conversation, so I was like, you know what, I don't want to rush it. I'm just going to wait. This is a game that you and I both love so fucking much that I 100% can back any superlative you throw at this.
Yeah, and I like for me it came at, and I know you're jumping into it more now, but for me it came at just the right time because we were a little hesitant about Starfield at the beginning, and then we played Starfield, and then kind of slowly came to the realization about what it is. And obviously you came down a little more negative on it than I did, but I still recognize, and all of your feelings and all of everybody's feelings about it are totally valid. But coming off of that to then be able to go back to Cyberpunk, which is a game that I really liked when it first came out. It had its problems, and it was shallow in a lot of ways and stuff, but I still really enjoyed my time with it, and there were a ton of great moments, and just being around the city was great. Like, the 2.0 stuff is a real I don't want to say game changer because it's so cliche, but it really changes the way I feel about the base game.
The perks,
it's
like,
so much
to
more
me,
fun.
The perk overhaul is
that's one of the
huge,
biggest things,
man.
Yeah.
Like, I remember playing through it the first time and like having no idea what I was doing, picking perks, and they didn't feel meaningful. It didn't really feel like I was changing the way I played the game.
Right.
And now with the system, like how I'm specifically devoting points to whatever, like body or cool or whatever, to like be able to access perks because there are perks that seem so awesome. Yeah. Like, I've been trying to go hard on, I don't remember what the category is, but it's like where you can use blades. It helps to do blade stuff. And I've been really devoting a lot of points to the blade work because I want to experiment with that. And like, I got one where I can deflect bullets now, and it feels so fucking awesome, dude. And that might have been there in the base game. I don't recall. But again, if there was a perk that allowed you to do that, it was so buried that I just never saw it. Right. And with this, because of the way they've laid it out and they've orchestrated your perk points, it's so easy to feel like you're actually progressing to the skills that you want and able to make meaningful choices when you want to make them. Right. That to me has been huge. The other updates, like the overhaul of the police stuff, I haven't engaged with a ton because I'm not fine. I'm not trying to kill everyone all the time. But I know they added in a bunch of new vehicles and stuff, and that all's been great. It is fun to be able to shoot while you're driving now at any time. But yeah, the perk things, though, that's the big thing for me. That's really like it's reinvigorated some excitement in this game.
Yeah, and like I hadn't for a really long time open world game. I had so much fatigue with them. This one really reinvigorated my desire to like do everything. So like I did all the side missions, and then the Phantom Liberty content specifically for the DLC going into Dogtown. just the way in which that place, it feels so authentic to the world, but also so different. It feels you really feel siloed off from the rest of Night City. I think that the story is really fun. There's a lot of really great blockbuster moments, a lot of fantastic writing and character work going on there. It's a lot more nuanced than you think it's going to be going into it. Some fun implications for the main game. The content outside of the DLC that goes along with it. New vehicles and weapons. New series of perks that you get and access. I don't know if they're perks or talent, I forget what they're called, but a new series of abilities that you get access to by doing the stuff over there. Just a lot of really cool shit. I feel like it saved me in a time where I needed some saving because Starfield wasn't hitting the levels that I wanted it to. So for that reason and more, I think we should put this on the short list.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
Cool.
I'm really bummed to have not played it. Like I'm sad that I didn't, because I wanted to start a new character, and then I wanted to get deep enough where it made sense to do things. Like it just, timing wise, it just didn't work out. But I wish that I had played it so that I could, even push harder for it.
For sure. So next up is the Dead Space remake. This one was developed by Motive and published again by EA. Released on January 27th at the very beginning of the year last year. To me, like when I look at the Dead Space remake versus the Resident Evil 4 remake, all the issues that I have with the RE4 remake, I don't have with the Dead Space remake. Where it's beautiful. They made some really serious design changes to not just the combat, but also the way in which the Ishimura is laid out and the way in which you navigate it. And all of those things are for the betterment of the experience. They all heighten the tension.
Bringing modern game design sensibilities.
Yeah.
In
the original that I wasn't expecting them to be doing any of that. It was all a surprise.
They put in more work than we expected them to.
Totally. And it makes sense because it feels like they're going to want to continue this and do, redo Dead Space 2 or 3 or whatever.
Well, unfortunately, it sounds like this game didn't sell amazingly. I read somewhere, so I doubt they will end up doing Dead Space 2 based upon that, which is a huge bummer, but we'll see. There is hope.
It surprises me because it got a lot of really great critical acclaim. But that's a bummer. The sales numbers didn't do all that well for them. I don't know if that was a marketing thing or what, but Dead Space remake is fantastic.
I think Callisto Protocol, maybe it helped, but maybe it did not help either.
I don't
played
know.
That game and it sucked, and who knows?
Maybe it kind of ruined people's appetites for that experience at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally with you. I think it's a phenomenal remake. The only negative that I have about Dead Space, the new one, is that
too scary.
Yeah, man, making it so much more modernized, and the graphics are so mumuch better, and the lighting and the audio design, all that stuff being so phenomenal, makes it really scary.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would say we keep it. I hate the idea of, certainly not disqualifying, but holding against this game the fact that it is a remake, and it is not a remake in the sense of Final Fantasy VII was a remake, where it's a totally brand new everything. It's more than, or it's the same as Resident Evil 4, where they tweaked some systems, they overhauled some systems, and brand new visual style and all that good stuff. But it's not a totally brand new game. I think we keep it for now, but I do I'm less passionate about Dead Space remake than I am a lot of other games because it's still Dead Space.
I think we shall see. That's mostly fair. With all the acclaim and attention that Resident Evil 4 remake has gotten, it really bums me the fuck out that the Dead Space remake doesn't get the same kind of attention, because for me, they did it right and Resident Evil 4 did it way wrong, which I know I'm in the minority on, but sure. All right, moving on. So the next one, I'll let you handle that one.
Yes, Dredge from Black Salt Games, published by Team 17. This came out on March 30th. I just started playing Dredge. I added it because I'm really enjoying it so far, but I've played 3 to 4 hours. I know you played and enjoyed Dredge. Wasn't sure if you really enjoyed Dredge or just thought it was okay.
I thought it was okay, and I booted it up and I was like, oh, it's the Cthulhu thing. It's
sure.
It's that mythos. And then
yeah.
I heard a lot of people were like, oh, the reveal of the thing at the end was crazy, or towards the end was crazy. I was like, what reveal? And it's like, oh, it's that it's in this mythos. It's like, I didn't know that was supposed to be a reveal. I thought it was immediately.
I see.
I don't get what people are like losing their shit about.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a game that you would say belongs, then I'm certainly not going to push for it, having just started it. I am really enjoying it. It, assuming nothing changes, like it's a game that would end up in my top 10. I really like I compare it a lot to Dave the Diver, having just played that.
Yeah.
And this game is giving me more of what I want from this kind of game, because they're very similar in how they're structured. But Dave the Diver, because, it overwhelms you with,
system after system.
Systems, and also the dialogue and the little cutscene stuff. It interrupts you with missions, basically, because you're really only doing two things. You're diving and you're surfing, and it's interrupting you a bunch in that flow. Dredge, it feels like a much more natural give and take with all of the little quests and people that you find that are on little islands that need help with something. It feels like it's all part of the flow of what you're doing, and it's not interrupting you in a way that Dave the Diver felt like it was. So I think that comparing those two, that I really love about Dredge. I like the Eldritch horror stuff. That's not totally my thing, but I'm liking the vibe. Yeah. When I'm out there late at night, I am... my shoulders are tense. I've got goosebumps. I'm creeped out. I had an experience where it was the first time I was out in the middle of the night trying to get back to whatever the main area was to dock and sleep. And I saw there was a boat coming towards me with a light. And I was like, what the hell is this? I was kind of going towards it, and then found out, oh, it's one of those, fish that are in the depths of the sea where it dangles a light to attract other fish and then eats them. And it was one of those in a ghost form, and it bit the fuck out of my ship and broke a bunch of things. And I was like, oh my God, get me away from this thing. I need to go as fast as I can. So all of that stuff is really hitting for me. I'm liking how the characters talk to you, and again, just the moodiness of a lot of the dialogue, even though it's it's non-spoken. I think the actual fishing and the sort of management of your inventory in a very Resident Evil 4 way, that isn't phenomenal. That's not the biggest thing that I'm liking about it, but there's enough
the
there.
Fishing minigames got to be too much for me.
It's a little tedious, I mean, because you're doing it so much. Right. Yeah, that is a little bit of a bummer. When you're dredging, that I think is some kind of fun, where you're going between the levels, the outer to middle level, and trying to skip around the gaps.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which I'm sure that'll wear out its welcome too eventually, but that feels more engaging than just the QTE kind of button press that you need to do while you're catching stuff. I don't think it's a game that's going to be on the short list based upon how you feel about it. It's a game that I might have pushed harder for had I played more of it, but I'm okay letting this one go for now.
Okay. I do feel like I should go back to it someday. I don't know when that's gonna be.
It's tough. It's because it's got some of that horror stuff. It is I need to be in the right mood, right? I was gonna play some the other night. It up
for fun.
Yeah, I was like, it's either this or Cyberpunk, and Cyberpunk's so easy to just get into, and it's just so fun to explore.
Or whatever.
It's almost like I need to not have a big game, because then I don't have something else to avoid playing Dredge.
Yeah,
because sure. I do wanna play more of it. So we'll see.
This next one's all you as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Hi-Fi Rush is going to be on our short list. I know you don't care about this game, but right now, this is my number one game of the year. It deserves to be on our short list.
Damn.
Well, I think we have the conversation later. My 60 seconds is, the inventiveness of the sort of rhythm-based 3D action platformer is so well done. The game is so alive and fresh and, you know, breathing with the beat and moving with the beat at all times. The characters are super endearing and the writing is really funny. It takes a lot of really fun digs at like corporate life that obviously speak to me working in that environment. I just like, this game was a breath of fresh air. In a year with such phenomenal games, Hi-Fi Rush still stands apart as being so innovative and inventive compared to a lot of the other phenomenal games that we saw this year. And it's the most fun that I've had playing a video game this year is
damn
messing with combos and fighting bosses, and it's a fucking good time, man. It fills me with joy to think about and to talk about. So yeah, it's my number. Like, it might not end up as my number one game. Probably only Phantom Liberty is something that might de-seat that game. But yeah, man, it's good. It's a good video game.
Do I need to play Hi-Fi Rush?
You should, like, please just check it out. It might, like, you're such a fucking cynic. It's hard to know, man.
I know.
You hate things indiscriminately, so who knows? It would break my heart if you hated this game, but you should play it, man.
I'll try it.
It's on
I'll
Game
try
Pass.
it, and if I don't like it, I won't tell you.
Okay.
So you know, it's Schrodinger's Kyle.
Schrodinger's Chai is the main character.
Yeah.
He's like he is like Fry from Futurama. So if you go in knowing that, you'll like him. He's pretty cringy. He's kind of annoying, but if you look at him like you look at Fry from Futurama, he's very lovable.
The last 5 seconds probably saved me, and I will probably try this game then.
It's so good, man. Oh, it's so good.
I think you just said all the right words, so I'll try and try it. I'll try to try it.
You'll try to try it. I appreciate that. That's all I can ask.
You know what? It's
just try to try.
I me, baby.
Look, I tried to try Alan Wake 2. I gave you all I had there. I tried to try it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't try it, you know?
Hogwarts Legacy, developed by Avalanche, published by Warner Bros., released on February 10th, and somewhat recently released on November 14th on Switch, which is wild. Yeah. Hogwarts, you feel more strongly about this than I do. My piece of it is, I played through the Hogwarts part. I didn't do much of the outlying areas because it didn't really interest me very much. My thing, what I wanted to get out of it,
because it's not that interesting.
Yeah. Similar to a Starfield thing, I got what I wanted out of it, and I really enjoyed that slice of it. All the Hogwarts stuff was incredible. Running through the castle, everything larger than life, solving puzzles, interacting with students, doing the little quests, like all of that stuff. So cool. And then I was like, okay, I think I got the thing. And then they're like, here's this series of quests to like run you over to Hogsmeade. And I did like a quest out there, and I was like, okay, you know what? I think I'm good. I got my Hogwarts in. I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I know you played way more of it than I did, so.
I mean, yeah,
you beat it, right?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think of how many hours I actually put into it. It was, in the 40 to 60 range. I played a lot of this game. This is like the little engine that could, like, that's kind of how I feel. Not in a condescending way, but like I kind of have like a little bit of like a older brother pity for this game, because I think it's a good video game, but it's the number one selling game of the year, which is insane.
That is crazy.
But like no one talks about it as being one of the best games of the year. And like, let's be real, man. I don't think this is one of the best games of the year in capital letters, whatever. But for me, it was one of the best experiences in a video game for me this year.
Right.
The Hogwarts stuff is so, like, it's perfect. It's perfect.
So
I said this on the last podcast. I literally can't think of how I would make the Castle of Hogwarts better, realized in a video game than it is in Hogwarts Legacy. I think the open world stuff is super boring. There aren't enough enemy types. The combat gets boring after a while because it's so samey and it's really easy. the side quests and the people that you engage with aren't that interesting. The Merlin trials, a lot of them are pretty fun actually, but other than the Merlin trials, the little side activities are not fun. There's no reason to open up random caves so that you can get a random piece of loot that you're just gonna what's it called when you change the look of a piece of gear? Transmogrify, thank you. None of that stuff is interesting at all. This is much like we talked about Atomic Heart on the last podcast. This is a game that makes me so excited for what Portkey Games can do in the future.
Yeah.
Because this is the first game that they made. This is a studio that was created to make this game with help from Avalanche, as you mentioned. It makes me really excited about what comes next from them because they've got the bones of a ton of talent, and the way that they realize the Hogwarts, the actual existing in Hogwarts is so phenomenal. I root for this game, which it doesn't need me to root for it. It made so much fucking money. But it's coming into this, I really wanted to push for it, to be number 5. Because I know you didn't love it, but you liked the Hogwarts stuff, and I felt very similarly. And just I want it to get some kind of recognition. I just think it's hard with how many other great games we've got on this list. I don't want to just let it go now, but I also feel like this game will be number 10 on my Game of the Year list. It doesn't matter how many more games I play, how many more amazing games I play. I'll find a way, a justification to make it number 10. Because I want it. I want it to be on my top 10 list, but that might not be enough to get it in the top 5, given how you feel about it.
Yeah,
that's where I'm coming from.
I don't think I feel so similarly to this about how I feel about Starfield, where it's I got what I wanted out of it, but if you look at the thing as a whole, there are too many parts of it that I'm wholly uninterested in or disappointed with or whatever, that it taints the experience as a whole. My nugget of joy of the Hogwarts remains untarnished, but the experience as a whole is lacking.
Yeah, I think part of it for me was knowing that we played such different games than each other this year, more so than a lot of years.
Yeah,
the games we love are so different. This was a game that we both really liked parts of it. That I was that's I want it to be represented on the list because we both did like it. But it, if neither of us are going to be as passionate for this as we are half a dozen other games, then I don't know how I feel, because I was gonna say then I don't think it belongs in the top 5. But it's what's the argument, right? Do we want our top 5 to be, the 2 games you're most passionate about and the 2 games I'm most passionate about, and then whichever one of us can argue the best gets the 3rd game? Or do we want some representation of games we both really liked?
Right.
I just don't know.
Yeah, let's keep it.
That makes me happy.
Let's keep it.
Yes, we should keep it because that makes me happy that we're keeping
it.
I want it.
I want it too.
It might not. Once we get down to it, we've only cut 2 games. We're halfway through the list and we've only cut 2 games. But I'm rooting for it. I'm 50% of the decision-making committee here, and I'm rooting for this game. That feels a little biased, but we'll see what happens.
And the other thing, I'm also kind of rooting for this game a little bit because of that Hogwarts stuff is really fucking good.
It's so good.
Yeah. All right, it stays.
And Hogmead, the tequila's starting to kick in, so I apologize. Hogsmeade is also so good. I know you're not going to go back to this game, and that's fine.
No.
Man, you should really go to Hogsmeade and go find the little, oh shit, what are the little creatures? They're not trolls. Are they goblins? Is that what they are? The ones
house
that work at No. Oh yes, she is a house elf. Yes, it's not a goblin, it's a house elf. Find the house elf that wants to sell you a store.
Oh, I did that quest. That quest was
the
fantastic.
Horror quest?
Yes,
dude, that quest was
fantastic.
That's one of the best quests in any video game this year, hands down.
Yeah, that's a great quest.
That blew me up. It was so surprising the way that it went, and legitimately was terrifying. It's awesome.
I can't believe the rest of the game didn't have more of that in it.
Yes,
because that was capturing the spirit of what I wanted from that open world was crazy things you could never imagine, because magic is real.
Oh, yeah. Oh man, yeah. The main narrative is just not that interesting. The characters aren't that interesting. Like there's a lot of stuff that would hold this game back, but I still want it.
Yeah, me too. It stays. We talked about it. It stays. All right. The next one is Remnant 2, which was developed by Gunfire Games, published by Gearbox, and released on July 25th. Love myself a summer blockbuster game release. Man, Remnant 2 is really, really good if you're playing co-op. My buddy and I had an incredible time. We went through and we got almost every single side item, unlocked basically every class, was like on our way to leveling up all the weapons. I mean, we did most of the stuff, and it captures all of that Souls, like Soulsborne game DNA, and makes it a little less taxing, and also strips out the shitty community from it. And like that's not something to like lay on at the game's feet or whatever. Like that's gamers being gamers on that
hashtag gamer.
Hashtag gaming. But Remnant 2, of course, doesn't have any of that. It's generally speaking a really good supportive community. I had a lot of technical issues with it in the beginning, which turned out to be my fault because my computer was not perhaps put together correctly by a certain person with two thumbs on this side of the mic.
Okay. So I thought you were about to throw somebody under the bus.
No.
Dude, that's fucked up. It's your computer.
No, I built it, and I built it bad. I did a bad job, and so the game wouldn't work. So there's plenty of blame to go around. All of it on me. But Remnant 2 is incredible. Except for that last boss fight. Like that's it. Like it's not great single player, and that last boss fight is one of the most frustrating gaming experiences I had this year. Everything else about it is fucking incredible. And frankly, you only have to beat that boss once. Oh man, it's so good. So one of my favorite things about the Souls games is that sense of exploration, the ability of the player to ferret out secrets and feel accomplishment and satisfaction from that process. And Remnant 2 is littered with that stuff. And it's not always as esoteric as a Soulsborne game is. In some cases it's a little more straightforward, which I really appreciate, but there are some of the more esoteric ones in there sprinkled throughout. So it's like there are layers of exploration, and I really appreciated that because it's like as you're going back through and replaying areas to find new items, because there's some random generation in there which encourages you to replay scenarios. And like obviously you're still like getting currency and leveling stuff up as well. You're going through places, finding secrets, and then being like, oh yeah, I remember there was this room that we never got to open. I wonder how we opened that, and like just diving through that process of figuring that out, like looking at item descriptions, searching the area, like literally using your eyes and really looking at the visual elements in the environment around you, and discovering interactivity where you wouldn't necessarily immediately think interactivity would arise from. It's just really, really good at all that stuff. And we got a whole heck of a lot out of playing that together, and my buddy and I did. And it's one of my favorite experiences of the year. It's super, super good. And I really liked the first Remnant, but there are a lot of caveats with that. It was definitely like a proof of concept.
Yeah.
A really big technical mess. And the balance just never felt right. In Remnant 2, it really feels like they really found their footing with it. And I just think it's really, really incredible. So
yeah, this is this goes in the tried to try category for me, like which I love so much, that phrase. Like if there was a game that would get me to actually give a Souls like a fair shot, it was going to be this game.
Yeah.
And there's, at this point I probably won't go back and play it, right? But like this is as close as you could possibly come because it's a shooter, it's a little bit more approachable. They specifically made a class that makes soloing easier. Like, all of those things I think were really smart. The only thing that I would like put back on you in terms of like, is this a keep or cut? How much of what is great about this game was great because you were playing a co-op versus how much does it stand on its own?
No, I think the game is balanced around co-op. And they have ways for you to like matchmake with randoms and stuff and have that not be a bad experience. They have some safeguards in place and some smart systems there. They have like the message leaving system and stuff like a Souls game has. They have all that stuff. Like they're doing the things that those kinds of games do to build a community. And I think they do it pretty well. Yeah, and it's not that it's like you can play it co-op. I really do think it is balanced around that kind of experience. So yeah, I hold it against it that the single player experience is not very good, but they do a lot of things to make it accessible for you to play with friends.
Sure.
Like, because Souls games it's always kind of a pain in the ass to play with a friend. Like, there's always some dumb hoop you have to jump through. Like, Remnant 2, they make it really straightforward and easy to do it, which I greatly appreciate. So, I don't know that I necessarily hold it against it in any way.
Well, it sounds like this is a keep.
I think so.
Yeah. This next game I think is also a keep.
Yes, Sea of Stars. Yeah. Developed by Sabotage, self-published by them, and released on August 29th.
This game slaps.
It's so
this
good.
This game is everything that a video game should be. Like, the characters are so lovable, and the writing is so witty and fun. The visuals, like, it's not like they're reinventing what pixel graphics look like, but just the color and the animation is so nostalgic and modern at the same time. The combat is such a great modernization and evolution on what turn-based RPGs are all about. Like, the way that you engage with your special attacks, as we talked about in the last podcast, the boomerang attack being one of our best mechanics of the year. Like, this game is fucking dope. It's on the shortlist, man.
Yep, I put it up there.
Also, dude, I am drunk, Kyle.
Are you really?
Yes.
Whoa, dude. I mean, I'm not. I need to drink faster.
I think
I'm on my like second and a half glass. I'm only Fireball in
yeah, I'm halfway. So I've only had a shot and a half of White Claw. It's being in this environment and talking passionately and sitting still in a chair. It's just hitting me much harder than I expected.
Oh, drunk on your love of games.
Yeah, dude. I'm drunk on my love of games and also Espolone, you know? I'm not beyond saving. I'm not incoherent, but I'm vibing.
So you're saying I can get away with some shit now?
That is probably not true.
Okay, fine.
But you're welcome to try.
Okay. Speaking of, next up is Shadows of Doubt, developed by Coal Powered Games, published by Fireshine. It was released on April 24th in early access. It is an early access title, still in development.
This game sounds fucking great, man.
It is so surprising because it is an incredible idea that nobody has like spoken out loud before. And that shocks me to my core because once you hear the pitch, you're like, oh, fuck yeah. It is a procedurally generated detective game with like several city blocks of high-rise buildings. All of the NPCs are simulated. They all have their own schedules and relationships. They have places of work because there are businesses in those buildings and offices. They all go to work. They have schedules. And there are randomly generated crimes that happen, and you get to solve them as a detective. And as you solve them, you're earning money and buying new equipment, like like lock picks to open doors. There's like all sorts of gadgets for spying, craft, and stuff like that. But you can buy your own apartment and then like keep extra supplies there and stuff. You can play it as a survival game if you want. So there's like hunger and thirst, or you can turn that stuff off. Like it's an option. And it's just like rainy noir vibes, up, down, and all around. Every case you have like a little notebook, pin-up board where you have your thumbtacks and you're drawing lines and typing in conclusions and clues and all sorts of things. And then once you feel like you have it solved, you put your case file, you submit it, and if you're right, you get the credit for it. If you're not, you don't. And it is fucking insane. Absolutely insane. And it's so good. It is a procedurally generated first-person detective life simulator. Fuck. What a God, what a good fucking idea. Oh!
It bums me out that it's on PC only.
Yes.
This won't happen because it's too expensive, but like I want to convince my wife to let me buy a Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I would love to have a Steam Deck, and I'm not going to play every game on a Steam Deck. I have an Xbox and a Switch and a PS5. I want to play PC only indie games. That's
right.
What I want, and my computer cannot run them. I would love to play Shadows of Doubt.
So fucking good.
But I can't spend $550 on a Steam Deck.
Yeah.
When I already own an Xbox and a PS5 and a Switch.
And a Switch, yeah.
I just can't do that.
Yeah. I don't think, like, as incredible as this game is, there's a lot of room for things to be added to make it a more complete experience. Like, there are not that many types of crimes that can happen right now. It is an early access game. They're still working on it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I'm comfortable not putting it on the short list.
Wow.
With the knowledge that it will probably be on next year's short list or on this year's short list.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fine. I hey, this is Two Shot Shea talking. I'm totally okay with considering a game when it's in early access and considering a game when it's 1.0. Like, I wouldn't want a game to be on a list twice, but like, I wouldn't disqualify a game for being in early access. Is my point.
Yeah,
I'm kind of surprised that you would go ahead and cut it.
So I want to cut it because if you play the game for like 8 hours, it starts to repeat itself. Like, it's like, oh, it's kind of like this crime happens. Oh, it's happening in the same way again. So I know how to solve it.
Like 8 hours is a good amount of time, though.
Well, but that's also like learning. That's like 3 to 4 hours of learning how the game works, basically.
Okay.
Like doing, like the tutorial's like an hour and a half because it's like a mini scenario. And then you get into a real world or a real save thing and you're in it for like 4 or 5 hours. And you're like, okay, it's starting to repeat itself. Like once you have figured out how to solve a type of crime, you can kind of solve all of those types the same way from then on. And so it needs way more variation. Like it's an early access game. So like all of the gameplay pillars are there. They aren't as deep as they need to be, to make it as satisfying and simulator like. It hasn't reached its full potential. It hasn't gotten to the full Kamehameha yet. The hair isn't blonde and crazy yet, flowing in the breeze.
Yeah, that feels fair. I'm surprised by that, but that feels fair.
Yeah, it's like it's an incredible promise. And
sure.
And I'm comfortable leaving it at that.
I mean, like, we're almost at the end of this list, and this is only the third game we've cut. Like, we gotta cut some video games. So if
that's also weighing into my decision.
Look, I'm not going to argue with you to cut it, is my point. But I guess I'm just surprised again because of how inventive it was and how excited you were about it. But I think your justification makes sense. It's like, assuming this game goes 1.0 in 2024, it feels like it's a strong contender. And hell, maybe I'll have a Steam Deck.
Yeah, maybe. So leaving Shadows of Doubt for the future, no doubt in my mind. Next up is Sons of the Forest, another early access game. Developed by End Night, published by New Night, which I believe is just a publishing arm of the developer. This released in early access on February 22nd, so earlier in the year. It has been seeing constant updates and updates, content additions, expansions to the map, new items, and story elements and stuff like that throughout the year. When it started and launched, it was pretty bare bones, but they've added like new tiers of building and crafting things and a bunch of new stuff. So it's in a pretty good state right now. I have not played it in a while, so I haven't played kind of the most up-to-date iteration of it in a while. I think it's doing all of the things that I love in the survival genre. I think it has multiple types of base building. It's an insanely gorgeous game. There are so many fun and satisfying mechanics. Like, chopping down a tree in this game looks the best of any tree chopping in any game, because as you're chopping it, like, little chunks where you hit it are flying off, and it'll tip over, and then you can tip it over into like a stream, and then the current will carry it down. And so, like, most people make their bases at the lake because all the streams feed into the lake, so you can go chop the trees along the stream and all the logs will flow down to where you're building your base, kind of a thing. It's full of little things like that are smart, simulator gamifications of simulator elements that feed into the gameplay loop. It's also creepy as fuck. Like, those those cannibals are really fucked up, and there's the cannibals, and then there's the weird, messed up cave cannibals that are like mutants or whatever. There are NPCs like that will join you if you're playing. So they did a really fun thing for single player where you're like a spec ops, black ops team that is helicoptering over this island, and your helicopter crashes. If you're playing single player, I think also multiplayer, he's an option, but one of your fellow squad mates like gets a really, really bad head injury and isn't like all cognitively there, but you can give him like, he's mute, and you'll give him like tasks to do, and you'll write him on a piece of paper for him and give it to him, and he'll go and do them. He's like deaf and mute basically because of his injuries, and like he'll go chop trees or go fish or collect sticks or whatever for you, and he's just like a fun, comforting presence, especially when you're playing by yourself, because you're out in this wilderness and there isn't really much of a soundtrack. It's mostly just kind of the sounds around you, and like you'll hear weird little things in the underbrush, and like you'll look and there'll be a cannibal off in the distance flitting between trees, but very clearly watching you from far away, like trying to see what you're all about, and that's spooky. And then, you know, a couple days later they get a little braver and they get a little closer, and you're like, okay, when am I gonna have to make a stand here? When am I have to make them understand I mean business? And then sometimes like they'll attack you in the night, kind of a thing. And then you discover that they have their own camps in this game that you can go and find and do stuff with and get resources from. There's another NPC of this woman who's been on the island who has a third leg. And like she has clearly like been cast off from the cannibals or some other weird group or something, and she doesn't speak your language.
That doesn't make sense, man. Like, she's got more to enjoy.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, real cool.
They're cannibals, man.
Yeah, I know. It's more food. It's another dinner. But like, she's very scared of you at first, and you can do things like, if you don't hurt her, right, she'll get used to your presence and get closer to you, and you can give her gifts and things to make sure that she understands that you're not a danger to her. And eventually,
is one of the gifts you can give an extra shoe?
It's not. No.
That's fucked up.
You can give her a fucking shotgun, though. Like, you can give her your guns eventually. Okay. And so she'll just run around with you blasting fools, which is fucking cool as shit. There's just a lot of things to really love about Sons of the Forest. There is no other survival game that handles its systems quite like it, that evokes the same kind of uneasiness, like just a general sense of uneasiness at all times, no matter where you go. Like, 'cause it's this beautiful woodland forest, and just those occasional fleeting glimpses of these, this malicious presence it really just kind of eats at you. But yeah, so Sons of the Forest, it's also an incredible cooperative experience because, like most survival games, different people that are playing can fill different roles. Like, I'm the tree guy, you're the fish guy, or let's all get together and go exploring, and like fun things can happen and emergent situations that come out of that.
Right.
And there's a narrative to it too, which is neat. But yeah, I came into this being like, this is another one we can cut. Sons of the Forest is really good, dude.
Yeah, how much of the first game did you play?
I beat the first game.
And like, I mean, do you feel like this stands on its own as a sequel? Like it
is a significant refinement to a lot of the things that are going on in the forest. Okay. Like they learned a lot of lessons making that first game, and they implemented a lot of new systems in this one, in Sons of the Forest, that I think make it a way better game than the first one. Just a more satisfying, immersive experience. But like the AI of the cannibals is so much more sophisticated. They really feel like they have like a caste, like a hierarchy system, and it's really cool what they do.
In the early access context, like how much innovation do you see there being before a 1.0? Because this is the kind of game that
it feels like it's pretty much there.
Okay. Because I was going to say, a lot of these types of games sit in early access for like 2 years.
Right. And this one might still, but I feel like that extra year is going to be bug fixes and maybe like, there's a new little side thing that you can do, or a new weapon or whatever. It feels like they've really kind of added most of what they're going to add. So yeah, I feel differently about this than Shadows of Doubt, where it's like Shadows of Doubt feels like they need to add a lot more stuff to it. Sons of the Forest feels a little more, especially at this point in time, feels much more complete.
And is that, so comparing it to Shadows of Doubt, like, is that a positive? Because like with Shadows of Doubt, just given that it is in early access, seeing the baseline of what this game is and how high they can go, like how far they can go with it, is exciting. On the opposite side, some of the Sons of the Forest feeling pretty complete. Like, are you satisfied with that?
That's an interesting question. I think so, yeah. I feel like Sons of the Forest is the kind of game that I would come back to, a year or two down the road and boot up another save with a different group of friends or whatever, and go through that experience with them. And like see what crazy things we can build, and try and because one thing that they added since I've played is like the ability to really make like traps and stuff around your base, and sort of like a little bit of a tower defense kind of a system against the cannibal attacks on your base, and that's not something that I really got to experience when I played it early on. So I mean, there's still plenty there that I am looking forward to checking out. But
so let me make a quick formatting edit on the fly to this podcast. So you're talking about Sons of the Forest. You also have Witchfire on this list.
Yeah.
I think for the sake of a short list, like to pick one between those two games.
I'm thinking about that.
Let's chat about Witchfire, and then we can do like a little head-to-head with these. And if it feels like, assuming you want to keep one of them, which I think you probably will for now.
Yeah.
Like to have a head-to-head, because I will do a similar thing with my next games on this list as well.
Okay.
Because like both Sons of the Forest and Witchfire are not going to make it on the top 5. Just like, multiples of my games coming up are not going to make it. So I think, narrowing down our short list from here is a good plan. So let's chat about Witchfire and then like see which one feels better for the short list.
Yeah. So Witchfire was developed by the Astronauts and self-published by them, released in early access on September 20th on the Epic Games Store exclusively. This is the game that's heavily inspired by Hexen. It's a first-person shooter, but it's a Souls-like, where you play as a witch hunter who is trying to work their way towards confrontation with a witch, like the witch being the final boss kind of a thing. And the witch has minions that are running sections of a landmass, and you go to these kind of sandboxy open areas, and they're procedurally, the landscape doesn't change, but the threats and loot are procedurally generated, and each one of those has one of those minions that is a boss. For my time in Witchfire, I beat the first area and the first boss, and I got to the second area, the castle, and I got into the castle, and I got the drawbridge open, which is like a shortcut, a very Souls-like shortcut that makes it easier to get further in subsequent death runs or whatever. That is where I stopped playing. There's a lot more to the game left. I found the difficulty ramp to be really severe. But even though I was dying a lot, I was having a really good time exploring and seeing all the new things. Because as you're leveling up, the witch is sending new and more powerful enemies against you in response to your growth and power and stuff like that. It is a gorgeous fucking game. Aesthetically, it hits all of my, like, some of my favorite notes. It's like dark Western fantasy. Like lever action rifles, like repeaters, 6-shooters, stuff like that.
Shit, dude,
and some magic.
Did you play? Is it Evil West?
Did you
play Evil West?
I have Evil West. Evil West is like that, but Gears of War.
Yeah.
I have Evil
on
West.
PlayStation Plus.
One of my friends got it for me for Christmas on the Steam Christmas sale. I have not played it yet. It is installed on my machine.
Shit, man. Yeah, you gotta play that.
Yeah, I do need to try and play that.
What I saw of it, it doesn't seem like it's an amazing game, but that's the aesthetic you like, and that's hitting that shit.
Yes, yeah. But in a way that Evil West is very, like, tongue-in-cheek, trying to be stupid with it, Witchfire is very self-serious. So it's different in that way, but aesthetically they're very similar. So you're totally right. Man, Witchfire is so fucking cool, but again, it's one of those games that is hard for me to be in the mood to go back to because it is really, really difficult. It's very oppressive.
Hearing you talk about it, given that these are both early access titles, the completion, what is that the word I'm trying to use?
Completion?
The level of completion in the game seems higher for Sons of the Forest, and it seems like you have played more and gotten farther in Sons of the Forest compared to Witchfire.
Yeah. I've seen more of Sons of the Forest than I have of Witchfire. Yeah. I don't know how much is missing from Witchfire though. I haven't looked at the roadmap, so I don't know how much is in there now versus what will be. I also played it kind of when it came out in September, and I played maybe a little in October, and then I haven't gone back to it since then, so I'm not sure where they're at, but it's been a couple of months. But
yeah, I think, not that this needs to carry weight, but just for my context, there's nothing about Sons of the Forest that interests me. Witchfire is a game that I would love to check out once it actually comes out, on console and is available in 1.0.
Right. Yeah, honestly, I'm looking at these early access games, full disclosure, I'm looking at them right now. I'm kind of comfortable putting both of these to bed for now.
Sons of the Forest and Witchfire?
Yeah. Also, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We already have 8 on the short list. You have 3 more games of yours to talk about.
Yep.
What I'm finding that these are on my top 10 games of the year, by the way. But for the purposes of this conversation, where our large list is much more broad, and I'm finding that, even though Sons of the Forest feels pretty complete, I don't know how complete Witchfire is. I would rather talk about them when they're 1.0
Okay.
And I've seen all that there is to see, and can then like authoritatively talk about them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think like hearing you talk about those three games, Shadows of Doubt, Sons of the Forest, and Witchfire. Shadows of Doubt is the most exciting to me personally, both in terms of the inventiveness of the gameplay and also like most like a game that I would like to play. Witchfire is close to that because I also really enjoy that aesthetic. It's a first-person shooter. The roguelite stuff is less interesting. The Souls-like stuff is less interesting. But like it's in enough of a safety zone for me, like genre-wise, that I wouldn't get a lot out of it. Sons of the Forest is a game like I am familiar enough with what this kind of game is because there are a million games that are. Not that this game isn't unique in its own way, but like a lot of games that do this like survival type shit.
Yeah, there are a million games in that genre, and most of them are garbage.
Yeah, sure. And it totally seems like this game is great, and especially like I know the co-op has been really well received. Like when I look at these three games, that's why it was so interesting to me that you just were okay cutting Shadows of Doubt. Because that's the game that is the most exciting to me. But I think it makes sense because that game also has the farthest to go to feeling like a complete experience.
Right.
So, I mean, like, in totality, do what you want. I think it makes sense where you are with all three of those. A game like Shadows of Doubt in particular, I think, assuming it goes to 1.0 next year, I think is like a really strong contender on the list. But yeah, I mean, if you would prefer to just cut those for now, knowing that they're early access and that they all have somewhere to go and have a fair consideration to be talked about next year, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think that I'm comfortable leaving it there because I feel like I've said my piece on all three of them about why they fucking rule and people should check them out and watch them. And like keep their eye on them as they continue development. Any other year, I would fight for any of these three, but there are just so many good fucking games, and we have to winnow this down. And I am having kind of a hard time in my heart justifying these early access games, knowing that they're not like their story has not been told all the way already.
Sure.
So, yeah. All right, Shadows of Doubt, Sons of Forest, Witchfire, incredible games. Check them out. They're off the short list. So these last three are for you. I'm not going to tell you that you have to pick one. I'm going to let you torture yourself on whether or not you really want to pick more than one.
Well, so here's the thing. So the last three games, Spider-Man 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Let me start with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, because this game I think we're fine to cut.
Okay.
This is a game that is solidly in my top 10. I had a terrific amount of fun with it. I think that the Wonder Flowers add a level of creativity to this series that I didn't think would be possible. Like, it blows me away that Nintendo is able to come up with new ways to make a Super Mario Brothers game. That's fucking crazy, dude.
It's wild.
It's been almost 40 years since they started putting these games out. And like anyone that would tell you that the Wonder Flowers aren't innovative and fresh is just a hater, like straight up. I'm just going to say it. I don't care. Don't at me. Go ahead and at me. I don't care about that either. But like, I think, unfortunately, the way that the game ends with the last couple of levels feel like a little bit of a letdown, given how inventive a lot of the Wonder Flowers are. And outside of the Wonder Flowers, the innovations or like the new stuff, not even innovations, but like the new stuff in the game, like the elephant power-up and the drill power-up and the bubble power-up, are less impactful than I would have liked them to be. And so, aside from the Wonder Flowers, it does feel like another one of those. It is very fun. If you just played this like a Super Mario Brothers game and ignored the Wonder Flowers, it would still be very fun. But it's the Wonder Flowers that really elevate it to being like one of my most fun experiences of the year.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't reach the heights of the other two games. So I'm totally comfortable knowing that all three of these games are games that you didn't play. So I'm pushing by myself for these, right?
Yeah.
Like that one is safe to cut.
Okay.
Spider-Man 2 and Star Wars Jedi Survivor are so much more difficult to talk about. And like the original plan here, which is why I said, hey, between Sons of the Forest and Witchfire, pick one, is because for me it was like Spider-Man 2 and Star Wars, let me pick one. And frankly, it was like, of these two games, which one are you, Kyle, more likely to be happy to have in a top 5? Not saying that whichever one between these two continues on will make the top 5, but like putting it back on you between Spider-Man, because we've talked to death about both these games.
Yeah.
Between Spider-Man 2, which is a character that you love, but you're kind of over, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is a universe you love, but I know you played some of the first game and didn't really like it that much, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, you didn't like the combat. Knowing that it's more of that, like, I think it's better. The stances add some more customizability, and you can level them up separately, and you get new skills and abilities in terms of those. The not open world structure, but like the open zone structure with these larger spaces for you to explore than even in the first game, less linearity in those spaces. That adds a ton of fun. However, the things that you are finding are predominantly perk points and customizable or cosmetics, which I know was a thing you didn't like about the first game, that you were constantly finding cosmetics in these hidden areas. Yeah. Like, it is more of that, right? So neither of these games are games that I think that you would be excited about, but like for you, is it a Spider-Man game or a Star Wars game that you'd be more happy to see on a top 5? Because I like right now, Spider-Man 2 is my number 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is my number 3. I feel like I kind of have more passion for Jedi Survivor because I loved the story in both of them, but like the adventure of Jedi Survivor hit me more. Like the actual plot of that game I thought was more fun compared to Spider-Man 2. Yeah. The character stuff in Spider-Man 2 I think is slightly better than Star Wars. Not like blowing it out of the water, but slightly better. I think the gameplay and the flow state and the exploration is better in Spider-Man because swinging is like one of the funnest mechanics in any video game ever made. That's why it took so long to beat something like Spider-Man 2, the OG Spider-Man 2, in terms of city exploration. But I think the variety in the types of things you can do, the types of enemies that you can fight are better in Jedi Survivor. So it's like, it's so close, right? Yeah. Like for me, between those two games.
I'll say, so Jedi Survivor was on sale either on Steam or Epic Game Store just a little bit ago. I think it was like this week. And I came very close to buying it just based off of how you were talking about it and the things you were talking about with the story.
The story's such a fun ride, man.
And I also
I've spoiled it all
I really
for you,
need,
but
yeah, I know. I really need a Star Wars game that I like right now.
Yeah.
So I am more interested in Jedi Survivor. Everything you've told me about Spider-Man 2, I'm like, who cares? Sure. I would never and will never play Spider-Man 2 or the first one. Or Miles Morales, because I don't care about their version of Spider-Man. I have my version that I grew up with, or what, like my 3 versions that I grew up with. That's like too many, as far as I'm concerned, which is my whole superhero problem. But Star Wars, I feel like I still have room and love for, and yeah, I mean, I would enjoy seeing Jedi Survivor more on the list than Spider-Man 2.
That was kind of my assumption, but I wanted to have the conversation. Like cutting Super Mario Brothers Wonder, like that doesn't bother me, right? I love that game. It will get its superlatives as it already has, you know, in conversations in the past when I inevitably write my top 10 list in 4 years. But like Spider-Man 2 and Star Wars Jedi Survivor are like it's really hard for me to cut one of these games. But I'm also facing the reality of this is a top 5 between the two of us. Like, it's hard. Like, there is a infinitesimal chance that both of these I could push onto a top 5. So might as well cut one of them here, right? And so I think it makes sense for the game that we keep to be Jedi Survivor. I just have to say, like, I think Spider-Man 2, both of these games, but in particular Spider-Man 2, because it's the one we're saying goodbye to, is such a fantastic video game in every capacity. It isn't reinventing the wheel in any way, but that's
True.
Fine.
And that's fine.
The idea that every game, it's like we've become too spoiled in a way, and I'm saying we, like, as a gaming collective, have become so spoiled by games like Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, which, again, I'm not saying Spider-Man 2 is better than either of those games for a majority of people, but it's just the idea, like, the binary way that we look at video games today as, like, there are games like Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, and then everything else is bad. Like, any game that is a sequel is bad. Because it isn't completely reinventing itself. That means it sucks. And that's such a shitty way to look at it. Like, look, if Spider-Man 3 comes out in 4 years and it's exactly the same as the other 3 games have been, I will have a fantastic time with that game. But I will be a little bit bummed.
Right, yeah. I feel like... because you can't... Like, Assassin's Creed showed us, like...
Yes.
We just do not have it in us as people to experience that same interactive form of entertainment that many times with that level of familiarity and like the reliving that same experience that many times. This is like, it's only really like the second one. I mean, Miles Morales, but man. It's only the second one.
I think that's such a perfect analogy for this, because I feel like
it's not Assassin's Creed yet.
we've been so, because look, video games have been around for a long time. People in our generation have been playing video games for 30 years. We've been so burned by series stagnating over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a series. That like we judge something too harshly too early. Yeah. Like, I think of, like, Gears of War, right? Like, people were so burned out by Gears of War by the time I got to Gears 5. Assassin's Creed is a perfect fucking example where they tried to change it, right? Like, they did Origins and Odyssey, which were pretty different in the open world structure and stuff, but it still felt like the same
you're still
kind
doing
of
all
game.
the same activities.
And like this is the third game. And to be fair, it's the third game in 5 years. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
But it's the third game. If we get to a point where Spider-Man 3, which also, according to the leaks, they're making a Venom game also. Like, if all of these games come out and they're all the same, that'll be really disappointing.
Right.
But I'm not going to judge Spider-Man 2 through that lens, because I think that's unfair.
Yeah, and I don't think people should either.
The fact that it is more of the same means that it isn't my game of the year compared to a game like Hi-Fi Rush.
Right, and I think that's fair.
The fact that it is more of the same is still one of the best video games I played this year.
Sure.
Full stop.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox about the hate, which is so ridiculous, but the hate that Spider-Man 2, or maybe just like the malaise that Spider-Man 2 has gotten, is so unfair. I do think Jedi Survivor has an advantage in that conversation because it literally is only the second and not the third game.
Right.
And it takes a little bit more risk in how it structures its gameplay, and there's more leveling up in the combat and in the stances and that stuff. I think that stuff is more exciting. But man, Spider-Man 2, holy shit, what a video game.
All right, well, that means we have our short list. 9 games on the short list, so we cut
not that short.
We cut almost half of them.
That's fair.
That's Alan Wake 2, Cocoon, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, Dead Space Remake, Hi-Fi Rush, Hogwarts Legacy, Remnant 2, Sea of Stars, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So we just have to do what we did again and cut almost half of them and then order those half.
But before we do that...
Yo!
I don't have more tequila, so I'm just going to drink a White Claw. It's a nice, like, come down.
Oh, sure. Okay.
From the tequila. Are there any on here that jump out to you as obvious cuts? Knowing that we've got 9 games, we've got to cut 4, which in the grand scheme, that's not that many we got to cut. But are there any that feel like that stand out as they don't belong in this conversation?
For us, I think Cocoon, Remnant 2. I'll stop there.
I'm okay with that. I bristled.
One of yours and one of mine.
Yes, I bristled when you said Cocoon because my answer was no. I don't think there are any that stand out that we should definitely cut, and that was terrifying.
Well, yeah, that's yeah. Also, no, but we have to. So
yeah.
So yes.
But I think I think that is fair.
Stand out, but
I think that is fair. What is because these two games are very different in how you and I as a collective look at them, right? Like Cocoon is a game that I played the entirety of, loved, had some criticisms of, but loved. You played and liked parts of it and really didn't like parts of it.
Yeah.
Compared to Remnant 2, which is a game that you loved playing with someone else, which slightly changes the context that I have no experience with.
Right.
So it's like that's hard to compare. But I agree with you. If I had to pick 2 games, it would be those 2. It sucks to lose Cocoon just as much as I'm sure it sucks for you to lose Remnant 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I also feel bad about Cocoon, and this shouldn't factor into it, and so I need to like let it go. But I feel like a lot of people talk about Cocoon.
Yeah.
And I know we try not to, or we don't let this affect it, but I feel like not having Cocoon on there, not having Super Mario Bros., not having Tears of the Kingdom, people are going to look at this list and be like, fuck these dudes. I don't really care about that, but
I definitely don't care about that.
I am acknowledging that will probably happen.
But also, like, this is a top 5. Like, Cocoon...
Yeah.
Like,
these are all in the top 10. There are 9 of these games. They are all...
Theoretically,
Technically, Spider-Man 2 made it in the top 10.
Sure. Yeah, if we want to break it down that way, that's fine. But, like, the reality is every video game that we have talked about on this podcast is awesome. So the fact that Cocoon isn't making the top 5 doesn't mean that it's not awesome.
Right.
It just wasn't our shared top 5 experience.
Right.
Like, you know how many fucking video games came out this year? 5 is like 1% of all the video games that came out this year.
Not even. I mean, most of those games were like weird porn Steam games. But
Sure. Legitimate video games.
Okay. I think there's a community who would feel very upset at you. Right?
But yeah, that feels, well, it doesn't feel good, but that feels correct.
Yeah.
I think Cocoon and Remnant 2 can go.
Because like where I come down on it, I feel so strongly about Alan Wake 2 in the way that you feel so strongly about Hi-Fi Rush. We both have a lot of joy for Cyberpunk. I think we both recognize what's great about the Dead Space remake. We both are rooting for Hogwarts. We both love Sea of Stars. I think the next one that gets cut... well, honestly, the next 2, Dead Space and Star Wars. Now that I just finished walking down that list...
So that gets us to 5.
Right. So, like...
We need to pause. We need to pause on that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm ready for that. Look,
my gut check is Dead Space and Star Wars go, and that leaves us with Alan Wake 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Hi-Fi Rush, Hogwarts Legacy, and Sea of Stars. Which legitimately feels like a very you and I list.
All right. I don't want to end game this.
Let's talk about it.
Because, like, look, spoiler alert, I think you're right. But let's get there. Let's work through this and get there. Because also, so before, spoiler for how Kyle and I talked about this. Before we started the podcast, I was like, there are 4 games that I know 100% will make our top 5. And it's just figuring out what the 5th game is. Those 4 were Alan Wake, Cyberpunk, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Stars. I was like, there's 0% chance those 4 games don't make the top 5.
That's so funny that the Hogwarts is the 5th, and we're both like, oh, it's because we really want to root for it.
So, like, let's get there. So because in all seriousness, I would love for Hogwarts to be number 5. I think it's a great fit for it to be number 5. But I want to have the conversation because, you know what I mean? Like, it's
a podcast and people listen to it. So,
yeah, that's true.
A couple people listen to it.
We shouldn't just like agree because we know that's the truth. We should get there organically. Yeah. What I do think we can definitely do is say that Alan Wake 2 and Hi-Fi Rush are in the top 5. It's your number 1 and my number 1. No arguments, like no ordering, but no arguments. Those 2 games should be in the top 5.
Yeah. And neither you or I want to take that away from the other person. So
100%.
We're not 100%.
Gonna. 100%. I do think so. This is so tough, man.
I wish we had both. Yeah, so I wish we had both seen all of Phantom Liberty. I wish we had both seen more of Sea of Stars. Because I know you and I didn't beat it.
Yeah,
you and I didn't get that far into it. But I do know, like, anecdotally, that Sea of Stars is really strong all the way through.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that I keep... I really want to play it again. I just keep... I was talking to you before the podcast. I wanted to play Under the Waves, so I played that. I have Chance of Sonar installed. I have Evil West installed.
Ooh,
I played RoboQuest. Yeah, like, I have all these games that I need to get to and, like, at least flavor. I was trying to do before the podcast. I didn't get to Chance of Sonar or Evil West. Although Evil West might have been a year ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, that was last year.
Yeah. But Sea of Stars is on my must-finish list, and I will, because it brings me great joy to play it. Things keep coming out, and I keep getting too busy.
Yeah, I think you made the right call. I'm glad you played Under the Waves, because that was a game, had it hit like you expected it to, like, I would have totally been on board with you.
It could have broken in, but it didn't.
I think you made the right call. We have to be real about how we engaged with these games. Because, look, we both love Sea of Stars.
Yeah.
Like, we each have played, like, half of that game. Which, that's a lot. That's a lot. Like, that's enough.
For an RPG, yeah, that is.
Yes, that's enough to like, qualitatively pass judgment on a game. Mm-hmm. But there is the theoretical possibility that the story doesn't wrap up, that the other characters that are introduced are not as hot as the ones that we enjoy, that the combat gets stale after another, 6 to 8 hours. Like, those are real possibilities compared to a game like Dead Space. Did you beat Dead Space, the remake?
Oh, yeah.
So, I haven't, but I played a significant chunk of it. Like, compared to that versus Hogwarts Legacy, which I completed, you played a big chunk of, compared to Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which I know you didn't play at all, but I played, every single thing you could do in that game I did. Like, we need to consider that part of it. I'm not at all saying that Sea of Stars should get cut from it. I'm just saying we do need to consider that part of it. What I can say...
that's true. It is the only one of the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that one of us hasn't beaten. Yeah. That's true. It brings me great joy to have it in the top 5 because the game brings me great joy. So I kind of don't care.
I 100% agree with you.
Okay, can we lock it? Can we lock Sea of Stars?
Sea of Stars should be in the top 5.
Okay, thank you.
I absolutely agree with you. I don't know that it's at number 3, but it should definitely be in the top 5.
I don't know either, but yeah. Okay.
And again, just working backwards here, with Phantom Liberty, my experience with 2.0, like, it's not like it's a brand new game, right? Like, it's still Cyberpunk. The new perk stuff is really great. The other little things that they've added are cool. It's still the same game from my personal experience. But hearing you talk about Phantom Liberty, like, again, you know, I talked, like, Hi-Fi Rush is my number one game. I would be thrilled to have Hi-Fi Rush be my number one game when all is said and done. If any, like, literally the only thing that could top it is Phantom Liberty, because of how much I know how much I know I love Cyberpunk, and how you have talked about Phantom Liberty. I feel like it's really hard to not include Phantom Liberty on this list.
I agree.
Where does that sit in your top 10? Just out of curiosity.
Let me reopen mine. 3.
Fuck. What's number 2?
Dead Space.
Fuck! I was afraid you were going to say that. Oh,
no. So I think one thing I wanted to do is, after we establish our top 5, I did want to kind of do an informal, what are our top 10s individually, what we're thinking right now, and that can change and evolve over time, but unofficial top 10, I did want to go over that. But yeah, my top 3 are Alan Wake, Dead Space, Cyberpunk.
Oh man, that's tough with Dead Space.
It has stuck with me. Dead Space has.
So here's what I think we can do, and this is brutal. I think we can cut Jedi Survivor, because for our list, I would rather see Hogwarts Legacy make it than Jedi Survivor, and I would love to have the conversation about Dead Space. So I think either of those.
Let's lock Hogwarts, because we both are rooting for it.
And I don't think we can lock it.
I think so. We both want it to be in the top 5. Therefore, it should be in the top 5.
So you would take Hogwarts over Cyberpunk?
No.
But that's what I'm saying, because then Hogwarts is number 5.
I see what you're saying.
So, like, I would lock Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty, to clarify.
Okay.
And then, as we expected, it's between the final 3. And to me, I would cut Jedi Survivor because you have not played it. You know, Jedi Survivor is higher than Dead Space and Hogwarts on my top 10. Significantly. But you haven't played it, and I'm happy to have Dead Space or Hogwarts on the top 5. So I think it's okay to cut that. That sucks. Like,
yes.
Look, I'm psyched Hi-Fi Rush is on there. It's also on there by default because our number 1 games should be on there. To have my number 2 and number 3 games both not make the top 5 feels bad, but I'm okay with that, given that it's our list. I think the conversation is about Dead Space versus Hogwarts Legacy. I think the Dead Space remake is a better video game than Hogwarts Legacy. I think the atmosphere that it creates.
I already agree with your butt.
Are we just wasting time? No, we should talk about it. That's the point.
Okay, yes,
it's a podcast.
It's a podcast.
That's the point. Yes. Obviously, you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
Because I was like, the atmosphere I think is better in Dead Space. I don't think it's far off, though. I think the atmosphere in Hogwarts Legacy is also superlative.
Yeah, it's very good.
But it's more about, like, the density and detail in the graphics and the lighting and the audio design. Like, the work, like, I remember seeing trailers and, like, you know, walkthroughs of the audio shit before Dead Space when they were in the marketing cycle. And clicking on a video being like, who fucking cares about the grunts in Dead Space? And then playing the game and be like, I care. I absolutely care about the grunts. Because holy shit, like the sense of immersion. He is
breathing faster because his heart, dude. Like they're simulating his like circulatory system and how stressed he is.
There might not be a more immersive game than Dead Space this year. I mean, maybe Phantom Liberty competes in that realm, but like holy shit, the way that this game enraptures you and traps you on the Ishimura is fantastic. the way that they've evolved so many of like the structure of the Ishimura, like you talked about earlier, I think is super smart. I miss having a dodge roll from Dead Space 3, but I get why they don't have that in there. It makes it so much more tense. I think all of those things compared to Hogwarts Legacy, Dead Space is a quote unquote objectively a better video game. It is a better executed vision on a complete package of a video game. I have far more I have almost no complaints about Dead Space. I have far more complaints about Hogwarts Legacy. But
the Hogwarts is good. It's so good. It's so good. Kelly and I have been rewatching the Hogwarts movies because it's we try to do it like normally we try to watch them all in the fall, and like wrap up at Christmas time and just with the kids, and because it's a long story. My daughter gets too scared. Once we get to the fourth one, she gets too scared, so we're watching them by ourselves. We just watched the fourth one the other night. Like, Hogwarts is one of my favorite places in fiction. Yeah, agreed.
And I've said this so many times. I can't imagine the Castle of Hogwarts being better in a video game than Hogwarts Legacy. Like, it gives me chills thinking about it. Running around in space and it's just like...
I'm going to sit Kara down this weekend and we're going to watch all the Harry Potter movies.
Are you off on Monday for MLK?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have our new couch in the living room and stuff.
Hell
too.
Yeah, dude.
We redesigned the entire living room and stuff, and so we
have that couch Monday off.
Yep.
That is perfect for an HP marathon.
We're gonna do that.
So yeah, I think Hogwarts Legacy makes it over Dead Space, and
yeah. That sucks, but also doesn't suck at all.
Yeah, it totally feels... Look, dude,
it feels so good and so bad.
I'm so happy that you agree with me.
I do.
When I came into this podcast, I knew the 5 games that would make that should make the top 5. But I didn't know if you would go with me on Hogwarts Legacy, which is why I said I knew there were 4 games.
So you're saying
I didn't know if
you've been subtly twisting the screws and turning the dials behind the scenes.
No, it's more that I was trying not to endgame this. I was trying not to be my normal, Asperger self of having this preconceived notion of how everything would play out and legitimately be open-minded. But I also knew what was going to happen. Yeah, I think Hogwarts Legacy belongs at number 5 for sure.
Let's put it at number 5.
I'm going to do something here in the doc that I think will make you happy.
Holy shit.
I knew was going to happen from a month ago, over a month ago when we started talking about this.
Yes.
And that is say that Alan Wake 2 is the number 1 game on this list.
Let's fucking go!
It's far more fun to work our way backwards from number 5 and then, let's compare these things. Are we going to have the fight between Alan Wake and Hi-Fi Rush, or does something like Phantom Liberty make more sense? But again, I knew coming into this that I wanted Alan Wake 2 to be our collective game of the year. This is a game that I'm not going to play. It's not that I don't care or wouldn't be interested or wouldn't want to play, but I know I won't because I don't enjoy this type of game. I know that I won't get out of it what the game wants to give because it's not my thing. The level of passion and excitement that you have for this game fills me with so much joy to hear you talk about it. Maybe not for 50 some minutes, but for the first couple, I'm so psyched to hear you talk about Alan Wake 2. And also, coming into this podcast, I had a secret objective, which was to get you to talk about Alan Wake 2 for the least amount of time possible. And so
it worked.
By just saying, yeah, it's our number one game, whatever, then you don't even have to talk about it anymore, and we can barely talk about it. No, we can obviously talk about it.
So here's the thing about the number one game of the year, Alan Wake 2.
Let's save that for the end, because
I'm kidding.
Obviously, no, I want you to talk about it. I want you to be excited about it. But because I do think it's the number one game of the year, and I'm gonna go on a limb and assume that you're not gonna disagree. Like, you're okay with it if that's the number one game of the year.
I love you like a brother.
I want you to talk about this game
because you're my brother.
Let's do the work and work backwards and have the list, because we should save the number one game of the year conversation for the end part of it.
We have our sandwich, our 1 and 5. We have our bun, our top and bottom bun. Let's find our patty, our lettuce and tomato.
The middle, I think, is tough. I am not putting a hammer down and saying that because Alan Wake is number one, I think Hi-Fi Rush should be number two. I don't know that that's the case. I do think that Sea of Stars is number 4. I think if a game is going to be on top of Hi-Fi Rush, it should be Phantom Liberty. How do you feel about that? Where would you put Sea of Stars? Would you put it at number 2 then?
At 4.
Or 2 or 3?
I'm stuck on the Cyberpunk versus Hi-Fi Rush.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Sea of Stars is a comfortable 4. If we had beaten it, perhaps, we could argue higher.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think it being at number 4 is incredible. I'm struggling with 2 and 3, because I mean, we both really love Cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. It makes me feel like Cyberpunk should be 1. Alan Wake and Hi-Fi Rush we should duke out for 2 and 3. I feel like you maybe gave up the Alan Wake 2 too soon, which is crazy. It's only because I've had a bunch of Fireball that I'm willing to concede this. But I like for your and my number 1, I think it should be Cyberpunk.
I think the hard thing, which is it, and the more we talk about it, the more angry I am at myself for not making this happen. The only thing I would say is, like, I haven't played it, and
yeah, you've only played the 2.0.
Obviously,
stuff.
I didn't play Alan Wake 2 either. But the point is, Alan Wake 2 is your number 1 game. Like, the way that you have talked about it, there is a significant distance between your number 1 and your number 2 game of the year.
Yeah.
And that's more where I'm coming from.
Okay.
With I'm open to having the conversation. I just think it becomes tough. Like, I would never argue, even if I wasn't like, Alan Wake 2 should be number 1 because of your passion. Even if it was like we should have a conversation about it, I wouldn't fight for Phantom Liberty over Alan Wake 2 because I love Cyberpunk. Because the reality is I haven't played either of them. I think the possibility that I don't like the story in Phantom Liberty is very small, but it exists. It exists. So I think that that's worth keeping in consideration.
Okay.
I think Alan Wake 2 should be the number 1 game of the year.
Okay. I'll stop sabotaging myself and my happiness.
Like I think it's a really good thing to bring up. And ironically, in an episode where we cracked open some cocktails at the beginning of it, like that's like you're taking it seriously and you want it to be representative of both of us. And I think that's admirable to not just like take the number 1 spot and run with it.
Well, yeah, but it's not like, for as much as we posture, this is, you and I are, it's never a competition between us. We care about the
Speak for yourself, bro. No, I agree with you.
We care about the thing being the thing as advertised, which is the Shea Hates Everything games that don't suck list.
Yeah.
And it's and enough said. Anyways, okay. All right. If we cement Alan Wake 2 at 1, we still have to decide what to do between Cyberpunk and Hi-Fi Rush for 2 and 3.
I know, like, in a vacuum, I think Phantom Liberty should be number 2. But I would feel real dumb if I played Phantom Liberty and was like, I didn't like it that much. That would feel really bad.
Yeah.
And so, given that this isn't an argument for number 1, because number 1 matters so much more, right? I feel like the safest route is Phantom Liberty's number 3, Hi-Fi Rush is number 2. That feels like the safest route. Like, it's totally possible that I play Phantom Liberty and am head over heels for it, and then I'm like, oh shoot, it would have been a great number 2. But that doesn't feel as meaningful as if I'm disappointed in it. Does that make sense in the way I'm talking about that?
Yeah. But also, devil's advocate, if it's Alan Wake 2 and Hi-Fi Rush as the top 2 games, then it's just our individual top ones as the first 2. And that feels stupid.
Why?
Because the point is it should be our collective list. And so it's weird to put games that we feel really strongly about individually both above the game that we both feel strongly about together.
But that's kind of the point, though. Like, I can't be passionate about Phantom Liberty because I haven't played it. I'm passionate about Cyberpunk, which is why I wanted it to be on the top 5.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's just a reality that I haven't played the DLC. And that's an unfortunate reality that exists.
Right. You played the base game with the updates. You have not played like the story stuff.
Yeah. Like to say what I'm saying in a more concise way. If Phantom Liberty is number 2 and Hi-Fi Rush is number 3, and then I play Phantom Liberty and I'm not that into it, that would feel really bad.
Right.
If Hi-Fi Rush is number 2 and Phantom Liberty is number 3, and I play Phantom Liberty and it becomes my game of the year, that would feel less bad.
Right.
Because the disappointment stings harder than it being awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
But I still don't know that that's what I want to do.
I think that's the answer. Hi-Fi Rush 2, Phantom Liberty, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty at 3.
Yeah, because even if Phantom Liberty ends up being my favorite thing from this year, just how much passion I have for Hi-Fi Rush, and again, Alan Wake 2 brings me joy because of how much you love it. Hi-Fi Rush brings me joy having played it. And that's what this should be about. Like, the joy that we get from video games. Not saying that Phantom Liberty doesn't bring joy, but again, haven't played it, man. So the joy that I got from Hi-Fi Rush, I think is worth celebrating on this list.
Yeah. I think I intend on playing Hi-Fi Rush now. So also post this podcast, I might end up feeling better about those two's position, just like you might feel similarly when you play Phantom Liberty.
Yeah. And I would, again, when it comes to the passion that we have for these games, I would never argue Hi-Fi Rush over Alan Wake 2, because it's like, it's not even close, right? Like, I hem and haw over Hi-Fi Rush versus Spider-Man 2 for my game of the year, and Hi-Fi Rush I prefer because of how fresh it is compared to something like Spider-Man 2. That's the differentiator. Compared to you with Alan Wake 2, like, there's no game that comes close.
Right. I mean, for me, Alan Wake 2 does the really important work of pushing video games forward as a medium. Like, in terms of our expectations and how we can mix that medium with other mediums, and how storytelling should work, and how to trust your audience, how to give your audience support in their understanding of a thing as a system and not as a heavy-handed, we're going to say the thing over and over and over again, or like we're just going to put it in an index that you load into a thing, like making it a core part of the experience and melding it together, feeding systems into systems, It's just really, really intelligent. I think it's a thing that you can hold up and say, other games need to be doing this too.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that Hi-Fi Rush doesn't do a similar thing with like rhythm games and that
it's very different
and other like music and games and stuff.
Sure.
But, yeah.
This feels good.
I feel
good about this.
Yeah.
I think, to your point earlier on, does it feel stupid to have your number one game and my number one game just be number 1 and 2? To me, it doesn't, because games 3 through 5, those are the you and I games. Both of us feel super passionate, in varying degrees about all 3 of the other games. It feels right to have this be a collective list that we are also highlighting the passion that we individually have for these games. This feels representative of how you and I felt about video games in the year of our Lord 2023.
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
All right, so the games that suck was last podcast. The games that don't suck 2023 in reverse order, starting at number 5, Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm so psyched. I'm so glad. Like, I wanted so much for this to be... Like, I only knew it was going to be number 5. Like, or if I was going to push for it, it was going to be number 5. But I really, really wanted you to be on board with that. I'm glad you are.
Flipendoing its way onto the list. Boomeranging back and forth into the number 4 slot, Sea of Stars.
Hell yeah.
Another true banger. Jacking into number 3,
Gross.
Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty.
Fuck, I need to play that shit, man.
Beating off into number 2.
Oh my god, dude. Come on.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh,
and
boy.
spiraling, not looping its way into the number 1 slot.
I was gonna say, like, mind fucking you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Don't make this dirty. That's terrible.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Alan Wake 2. Wow, what a year.
What a year.
Like, what an incredible fucking year for games.
Yeah.
Like, in this, we didn't, like we mentioned at the top, we didn't even talk about a bunch of other games that people really love and got a lot out of that just weren't for us. Like,
right.
2023 was insane. I'm very interested to see, as we go back in time for next podcast for games that suck 1996 and then kind of proceed through the years, like what years really stand out to us after going through them.
That's such a good point. Yeah, that'll be really fun. Because, like, I look, like, to me, I think probably my favorite year in gaming was 2007. That was BioShock, Mass Effect, the first Uncharted, Super Mario Galaxy. Like, that's probably my favorite year ever. But that, maybe not. As we talk through the other years, there may be other years that jump out of like, holy shit, what a year. But no doubt, 2023, in 20 years, right? Like, we'll be looking back at 2023 as one of the best years in the history of video games. So cool.
So there you have it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for joining us for this incredible journey, this incredible, slightly drunken, brotherly, familial journey.
I've started to come down a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
I did spill some White Claw all over myself.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. Really, really classy here. You can find the Shea Hates Everything podcast wherever you engage with podcasts. Be sure to subscribe. Leave a rating or a review. Tell your friends. You can email us at info@SheaHatesEverything.com, and we'll read your emails on the flagship podcast.
Tell us what your favorite game was.
What were your favorite games of 2023?
Yeah.
How do you feel about our list? Positive vibes only.
Yes, that's totally what we should say about our podcast, the Shea Hates Everything podcast. Positive vibes only.
Unless you're us. No, like, if you have constructive feedback, send it on in. We'll read it and talk about it. If you want to talk about sandwiches, A different podcast is waiting for your email. Or Disney World.
Disney World.
Leave us alone. Leave Brittany alone. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Shay. This was a ton of fun.
Yes.
Oh, man, what a time. We'll catch you all in a couple of weeks for the Flagship Podcast, and then next month, midway through, for Games That Suck 1996. Bye.
Bye.